On the final episode of this year's Road to Dallas, we want to thank our friends here at Southwestern Seminary for their help in making this series a reality. You've heard all about this incredible campus along the way, and we've only scratched the surface of all it has to offer. So if you have time while you're here in the Metroplex, be sure to swing by and experience this great campus. Now on this week's edition of the Road to Dallas presented by Southwestern Seminary, we sit down with EC President Jeff Iorg to discuss some of the business items coming to Messengers this year and get a recap of his first year in the role. Hello, welcome to this final edition of the Road to Dallas. It's been a 20-week journey, and next week we will actually gather in Dallas for the 2025 SBC annual meeting. And joining me there and joining me today is Dr. Jeff Iorg, the president of the SBC Executive Committee.
Hey, Jonathan. Good to see you, man.
Good to have you on again. Last year you came on right after you'd been elected. It's been a year now. How's that first year been?
Well, it's been challenging on the personal side to make all the adjustments necessary to get here and get involved in the work at the executive committee. But in terms of the work itself, it's about what I expected. In terms of the challenges, there are many. But in terms of the enjoyment I get working with the staff here, which is very high, but mostly I enjoy working with Southern Baptists, who I continue to say are the finest people in the world. It's a pleasure.
All right. And for 20 years, you served as the president at Gateway, Golden Gate Seminary before that, Gateway. In the last few years, but how has maybe the EC role been different for you than your 2 decades as a president of seminary?
Well, when you're thinking about your work at a seminary, it's really narrowly focused.
Mm-hmm.
You focus primarily on shaping leaders. Your focus is all about the academy and the curriculum and the student body and all the events and activities that go on to make a seminary community what it is. The executive committee is a much broader responsibility, and you see a much more global perspective on Southern Baptists and what we're doing. And in terms of the annual meeting in Dallas, as a seminary president, I had a very singular focus to come and expand the work of our school, meet our alumni, recruit new students, network with our friends from across the country. But at the EC, it's oversight responsibility for the whole meeting itself and for all aspects of what goes into those 3 or 4 days we're together. So very different perspective, and frankly, a lot more demanding to go to the convention as president of the executive committee than to ever go as president of the seminary.
I totally understand that. Maybe what were some of the highlights or whatever for the first year?
Mm-hmm.
Some places, I mean, you speak at a lot. You spoke a lot whenever you were president at Gateway. So
Right.
You're no stranger to Southern Baptist. You've been traveling and speaking and doing that. But maybe what are some of the highlights of this year that, kind of in that different role, that more global role, if you will?
Well, first of all, the best highlight has been going out and meeting thousands and thousands of Southern Baptists who are the greatest people in the world. Grassroots Southern Baptists are the finest Christians, most devoted people, most sacrificial servants. They're a pleasure to serve and to be around. And so that's one of the reasons I like being out speaking and meeting people, is because I find grassroots Southern Baptists to be just an invigorating, inspiring people to serve and to work with. In terms of events, particularly this spring, there have been a lot of events focused on the 100th anniversary of the cooperative program. So I've spoken at special events in Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama, Kentucky, and maybe others I'm not thinking of right now. I've been to all kinds of events celebrating the cooperative program and really recognizing what God has done through Southern Baptists with this ingenious funding mechanism that brings us all together to fund our work and to fund our global work by one simple means.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, about what we're doing at the annual meeting for that. But maybe some surprises, some things you may not have expected in coming into this role in the past year.
Well, I think positively, I've been surprised at the competence and the devotion and the really cohesiveness of the executive committee staff. From a distance, I always appreciated what they did, but I didn't really know them that personally and didn't have an opportunity to work with them on a regular basis. But frankly, we have a very small team that occupies a very large footprint of ministry, and I'm astounded at the work they get done. And the way they are able to do it all together and the way that we're able to accomplish so much, really with the limited staff and resources that we have. So that's been one of the pleasant
We're pretty awesome.
surprises. You are pretty awesome. That's been one of the pleasant surprises of this year. Another surprise has been, or I guess surprise is the right word. It's just been more of something that's been gratifying to me.
Oh,
Has been the number of people who've reached out to me and told me that they're praying for me, that they support me, that they're if you want to say it this way, they're rooting for me. They want to see Southern Baptists succeed and excel in our work. And this is ranges from state executive directors to other entity presidents to rank and file Baptists that I meet in various contexts. My wife and I jokingly say that except for a missionary on their birthday, we're the most prayed for Southern Baptists in the country because
yeah.
so many people come up to us and tell us that they're praying for us. And they're not just using that as a throwaway line to make conversation. They seriously are telling me that they are praying for me every day and praying regularly for our work and for what we're trying to do together. And so I guess that's been a surprise, but mostly it's just been a gratifying experience to have that happen all over the United States. And another really positive thing this year has been just the unity of the executive committee itself coming around, unifying around my leadership and being so supportive of what I do. And you're in the meetings. The executive committee is no rubber stamp. They debate issues. They have 1,000 questions. They very engaged and inquisitive in what we're doing. And yet, throughout all of that, there's been this sense that they really want to rally around leadership and they really want to support what I'm trying to accomplish here. And as I tell them openly, I don't always get it right, and they know that, but they realize that maybe we're getting it right most of the time, and so their support of me and their work with me has just really been gratifying and encouraging, actually.
Yeah, and on that note, you've been around the trustee system 20 plus years, and you've got sons, I think, that serve as trustees as well. And our trustees, they put a lot of effort into this.
Yes, they do.
They sometimes kind of get derided or whatever, maybe in the public, but they're good people, hardworking Southern Baptists, praying Southern Baptists that are taking their work very seriously.
Yes, and putting a lot of time into
Yeah.
it. If you're a member of the executive committee and you live anywhere far from Tennessee, you're going to spend with travel time at least 10 days a year working on executive committee business. Now, you think about it, if you're listening to this program, can you carve 10 days out of your life every year? And if you're a person who has a job, meaning you have to take vacation or other things, or if you're a person in ministry, you have to pull away from your ministry task in your local context. These people that serve in the executive committee and on all the boards of the Southern Baptist entities, they're vital partners for us, making a significant difference, investing hours and hours of their lives in doing this leadership responsibility. And so I have appreciated that process for a long time, but I'm seeing it here again at the EC, and it's been good.
Yeah, it is. All right, so let's turn our focus to Dallas
Sure.
next week. I mean, this is airing the week before the annual meeting, and next week we'll start, getting after it. I mean, they're basically at the end of this week. So, really, this year in Dallas, I've been thinking about it, and it's more celebratory, I think, this year than previous past annual meetings. We have the celebration of the 100 years of the Baptist Faith and Message, as well as the cooperative program, which you mentioned earlier. So that seems to add a different dynamic this year, I think.
Well, this is a remarkable convention. Can you imagine the two key aspects of who we are, our confession of faith and our cooperation expressed in the cooperative program? Both of those were adopted in 1925, and now 100 years later, we're celebrating both of them at the same convention. This is going to be a remarkable time of celebrating what God has done and how God has sustained us and produced a faithfulness of a people like Southern Baptists for the past century. And so I'm looking forward to those aspects of the celebration. And I think that those aspects, along with the other things that we do normally with missionaries, church plants, and all the other issues and things that we celebrate through seminaries and other work that we're doing, through all of that, I think this is going to be a very celebratory gathering. Now, of course, there's always business to do, and that's part of our work, and we accept that. But the overarching tone of this meeting is going to be one of celebrating what God has done among Southern Baptists.
And I think one of the cool things is that these things were set up in 1925. They have been tweaked. They have, undergone some changes here and there. But for the most part, they're still working like they were set up
Right.
100 years ago.
Amazingly so. The Baptist Faith and Message has been through a couple of major revisions, and they've improved it each time as it's been able to speak uh, in the language of the day
Yeah.
to issues that are before us. The cooperative program has just stood the test of time, and while there are many people who want to redefine it in some way today, I still think that the most effective way to use the cooperative program is as it was originally designed, a unifying giving strategy for all that we're doing together. And so these things are deserving to be celebrated. And as I've said in various places in this speech I've been making about Southern Baptists being a force for good, when you look back over the last 100 years in the United States, there's no denomination of churches that has even come close to experiencing God's favor like Southern
Yeah.
Baptists. It all goes back to the cooperative program. And where some funding may come from other sources, almost every one of these things started and had the impetus in cooperation expressed through the cooperative program. And when you look at all that's happened and all that's been done, you can only step back and marvel in awe of what God has done through Southern Baptists and for giving us this great gift of cooperation in the cooperative program. How exciting and wonderful that will be to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great time on Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon. We have some time carved out for both of those. And you mentioned earlier the business. You know, EC comes together throughout the year, brings forth business to the annual meeting for messengers to discuss, to debate, to approve. And, big piece of that every year, the budget. But this year, the Baptist Faith, I'm sorry, not the Baptist Faith, the Business and Financial Plan, a complete rewrite of that. Attempted a few years ago, didn't quite work out. This year, got a new one, and something that we really don't talk a lot about in Southern
Right.
Baptist life, the Baptist Faith, the
Business financial plan. Yeah.
but a really important piece of how we do what we do.
Right. Well, the business and financial plan revision was not something that I had on my radar when I came here as a goal.
Top of the list, right
It's
there.
like going to a church and the first thing you do is rewrite the bylaws. I mean, that's really not what you want to do the first week.
No.
But when I got here, there were a lot of motions that had been referred to the executive committee over the previous two conventions that really were about the business work,
Yeah.
business and financial affairs of the convention. And so as we started working on that, and you were in those meetings with me, it became obvious that piecemealing a response was going to be very challenging. And so it was better to simply take a step back and produce a new document. And so we worked with entity presidents, entity CFOs, attorneys and general counsel for all the entities, the EC officers, the EC attorneys. We've worked countless hours with all these groups to try to produce a document that satisfies the needs of Southern Baptists to lay out a general strategy of the business and financial work of the convention, and yet at the same time meet the needs of the entities that they could really uphold and report accurately. I think we've done that.
Yeah.
I think the plan is good. As I've said to the EC, and I'll say at the convention, uh, this is a plan I hope will be adopted. It can always be amended as we use it and see where it might be deficient. But I think it's a significant improvement over what we have and will help us chart a way into the future. And then a part of that you also mentioned is the budget. Every year, the executive committee is responsible to recommend budgets to the SBC. We've done that again this year. We're doing something that's really unprecedented, and that is recommending a priority allocation be set aside for the continuing payment of our legal expenses resulting from the decisions in 2021 and following. So this is really difficult for me to recommend and for many people to adopt, and yet at the same time, we've exhausted many other possibilities and options, and the executive committee, after meticulous discussion and deep debate, really came to agree that this was the best path forward. And so we'll make the recommendation, and we'll trust that God will lead Southern Baptists to adopt a budget that will be workable for us going forward. And these two big issues will come before the convention, recommended by the executive committee. And that's part of our responsibility, and also I think part of our duty to not only take recommendations forward, but then as decisions are finalized, to take those and implement them effectively.
Yeah, and for the messengers at home watching this, coming to Dallas, check out the book of reports in your app, or whenever you get to Dallas and do registration, you'll get a hard copy of the book of reports. It has the recommendations that Dr. Iorg is talking about from the executive committee, including a couple of bylaw revisions and some future SBC sites. So some things
Right.
that kind of relate to a lot of what I do over here on this side. So that's been fun to do this past year, is to go out and try to figure out now what places can Southern Baptists meet in the future.
Right. This is more complicated than many people
it's very,
understand.
very complicated.
First of all, we're a large meeting. Now we have 12 to 15,000 people that will be gathering for the event. And the Southern Baptist Convention has all of these ancillary events that take place around it with all the various fellowships and organizations and meetings that happen, meals and other events. So all of that taking place is a part of what has to be planned as well. You do a masterful job on this, trying to put the whole thing together. But when we start looking at future sites, there aren't as many possibilities as people might think. And then on top of that, we're really restricted in some ways by the timing in early June.
Yeah.
We just don't have a lot of date flexibility. But you were able to find, and the EC is recommending that in the future we go
now.
to San Antonio
Yeah.
and St. Louis as
Yeah.
two of our future cities.
Yeah.
After Dallas, we go to Orlando, and then Orlando to Salt Lake City. And then in the future years, these other cities come into the rotation, including, as I said, San Antonio and St. Louis.
And just so you know, I'm going to write Rob Manfred and tell him that when we're in St. Louis to be sure that the Cardinals are at home.
That would be very helpful if
We'll
you
take
could do
care of
that.
So.
And have them play the Giants.
Oh, there we go.
That would be good.
Well, I mean, if we're going to ask for, why not ask for the rest of it, right? Okay. Any final closing thoughts? You mentioned Southern Baptist as a force for good. You've talked about the good that Southern Baptists do.
Right.
Encourage our messengers that are coming to Dallas that are watching this as maybe they're traveling or the week before they're traveling, and just what you would have them maybe to have on their hearts as they show up in Dallas.
Well, one of the things that is always challenging for me at the Southern Baptist Convention is that media tend to pick up on the most negative comment possible made by some messenger who comes to a microphone and says something about Southern Baptists that may or may not be completely true. But media pick up on the negativity, and that seems to be often the message that comes out of the meeting. I've had many people, though, come up to me and say, after reading a media account of the convention that actually attended the convention, they'll say, was this person at the same meeting I was there?
Yeah.
Were we at the same meeting?
Yeah.
And that's really how I feel about it. I go to the convention and there's incredible positive attitudes from so many people. There are fantastic sermons, great missionary reports, unbelievably moving music and times of prayer, and then opportunities to go to special events that happen at the convention. And so when you take the whole sum of it together, it's a really positive, uplifting, dynamic meeting.
Yeah.
Don't leave with the one negative comment in your mind, or don't leave picking up on that one negative headline thinking that's what Southern Baptists are about. If you're at the meeting for 3 or 4 days like you and I will be, you'll see so much more about it that's so much more positive.
Absolutely. That's so good. And that's what I think people keep coming back for. They enjoy their time there, and it's good to be with our brothers and sisters.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's good to make the network connections with people you went to seminary with, people you used to pastor with in a different city or a different state, making connections with people that you've served with on mission trips and in other contexts. There's no place quite like it when the Southern Baptist family comes together for this kind of meeting. And so it's draining, it's demanding, it takes everything that you and I have for the days that we're there, but it's worth it because of what happens as people come together for the event.
You got it. And thank you for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week in Dallas.
See you in Dallas.
All right, and thank you for joining us again this year on the road to Dallas. It's been 20 great, incredible weeks here, and we want to thank Southwestern Seminary once again for joining us as our presenting sponsor of the road to Dallas. Southwestern Seminary's core values are grace-filled and Christ-centered, scripturally grounded and confessionally guided, student-focused, and globally engaged. You can find out more about Southwestern Seminary at swbts.edu. And we will see you next year on the road to Orlando.